Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. And what a way to end our series of creating culture and performance, competitive compensation, and today, how to rise fees. So we're going to look today, how to rise fees without your clients batting an eyelid. I think it's a subject a lot of recruiters fear, especially when they've got large cash cows on their books. But, clients are always price sensitive. So we've got to sort of look at simple reasons why our fees should increase, but also think about why clients don't listen to them. So if you're looking at consumer prices as a measure from the Consumer Price Index, it's now 9% higher than it was in April 2022 than it was a year before. On the 5th of May, the Bank of England forecast that inflation rates to peak at just over 10% in Q4 2022. That's the highest rate it's been since 1982. So then you think about the reality of recruitment and, do clients understand what recruitment costs us? And so a study by CV Library, which surveyed more than 4,000 workers, revealed that 69% of people now are driven by salaries. Only 14% say flexible or remote working is their most important factor. 90% of UK employees are seeking to recruit in 2022, and that's an increase of 66% on 2021. 87% of companies are struggling to fill jobs, with 63% failing to hire because of the skill shortage. So the cost that we as recruiters simply absorb and don't pass on, we've got to think about that, because 80% of executives think AI, which costs us, can help them improve performance and productivity in human resources. The number of job seekers using social media, which again we have to pay for, rises significantly to about 86%, and even higher in young job seekers. In the first 10 years of their recruitment, they use social media to find jobs. Only 33% of employers, and in 15% or in 15 global markets, encourage employees to use social media, which means they're limiting their chances massively, and they're not investing because they know that we're investing in social media. Top candidates are typically only available on the market for 10 days before they get hired. And 86% of the most qualified candidates for the jobs openly are already employed and not actively seeking new jobs. And the last two stats are the ones that really got me thinking. 89% of candidates agree that employers' careers websites are important for finding key information and making decisions when whether or not to take a job. And the same number, 89% of job seekers, said they evaluate a business by looking at their website before applying. And the 5 key priorities for recruiters in 2022, according to CV Library, was improving the quality of job hires, 52%, increasing the retention rate for our clients, 24%, improving the time for hire, 23%, growing talent pools, 22%, and the diversity in hiring, 22%. They're all costs to the recruitment agency that we never seem to pass on to the client. So the comment is, why do we not pass that on to the client? Clients are unaware the length it takes us to simply procure candidates, the cost it simply to procure candidates, because they don't feel connected to the cost or our product or our services. And therefore they struggle to see why our fees should increase. And so at times when this is challenged, what they tend to do is reduce our fees. So today I've got Dave and Heather with us. It's going to be quite an interesting conversation. Heather obviously is not recruitment. She's pure HR. So she's going to give us a really good client's perspective, because she's been pitched by hundreds and hundreds of rec-to-recs, etc., and other clients who are trying to drive their fees up. She'll give us a good understanding of clients. Dave, it's sort of to fight the recruitment corner here and help people there. PJ, Paul Jacobs could be here, but he's back from the fjords and he's in Bolton. He say it's just as beautiful, but maybe slightly different in some of the scenery. So let's kick off today. So first question here, fee or fear? What control do clients have over recruiters when it comes to fees? Dave, let's throw this at you first.
And it's interesting, isn't it, HD? Morning, everyone. I think it's interesting that use of the word control, because control can imply there's a winner, i.e. they who have control, and a loser, i.e. they that don't. And actually, it's not about, for me, it's not about control, it's about a partnership. And we often talk about this in recruitment, and sometimes it's quite difficult to get into that arrangement with a client. But if you see it as we're the subservient recruitment company trying to do our best and trying to work with our clients, but ultimately they have the control, then you enter into the discussion or the partnership from a very different place than if you see it as we're equal. They need the people that we provide. It isn't about me winning and getting a higher price, or the client winning and securing a lower price. It's about a partnership, about a discussion, about almost what you did to open up this webinar. Here's a series of things that are going on in the market. We want to educate our clients, so this is what's going on in the market. And because of that, we need to have a talk about the price. And if you can remove the word control in our thinking, then I think we can have a more intelligent conversation. And certainly from a jump point of view, we are working really hard with all of our clients to try to help them with those conversations.
Interesting your thoughts on that, Heather, because obviously you're looking at it from the other side, from the client side.
Yeah, I think there has been a tendency perhaps for clients to see working with a recruitment business as a grudge purchase. And so they, there is that idea. I agree with you, Dave, having spent such a long time working in recruitment, even though I quite often was from the client's perspective when I was dealing with recruitment businesses, they weren't ones, my recruitment businesses. It should be a partnership, but not everybody out there sees that and understands the value of working in a partnership. And so I think it really depends on where you are in the relationship with them, and how hard you've worked to build that relationship and make that connection. Because if it's a grudge purchase, it's going to be price sensitive, and so clients feel they have the power and the control, when the reality is it's a partnership and we've got what they need, which is candidates and honestly the skills and the understanding of being specialists at talent acquisition. That's what we do, and they're coming and buying it because they can't do it themselves, or they don't want to do it themselves. And so for me, it really is what Dave said, but from a slightly different perspective. You've got to have that equal partnership. You have to move away from the idea that it's a grudge purchase, and have a partnership of equals in the relationship. Completely agree, Dave.
So I think from my point of view, I think when I sort of looked at this and started to sort of pull this session together, that fear of missing out, the recruiter has that massive fear of missing out, missing the revenue stream, it's going to a competitor, and the sort of list goes on. Yeah. And I think, if you fear the conversation and you've not prepared for a logical discussion on fees with your client, then more likely you're going to lose. And I think the main reason is what we've been saying there is that, I've been saying for quite some time on these webinars that we see all clients as prospects, but in the main clients see us as suspects, and therefore they bully us. And if you think about what you said there, Heather, we go onto clients and we think every purchase a client has is a distressed purchase. Yeah. And therefore they're going to try use something that's quick and fast, and they'll go anywhere that they can do that. So they don't gender any loyalty, and therefore they can bully us because they are, shouting and commanding from there. And so I think to increase your fees with your main clients, they have to see you as a prospect and value your service. Yeah. And I think that also means that our services have to be constantly reviewed, upgraded, and be in line with the client's needs. Yeah. But don't
you think when you said about they have to value our service, we have to value it too.
Yeah,
we have to remember that what we do is a specialist skill. Yeah, that's why people pay for it, and we have to remember that.
And I think that's a really important point, Heather. I think that's the point that a lot of recruiters at the desk, maybe the owners know, because we've all set up businesses and we know how hard it is and we know how hard we had to work. Yeah. But sometimes the people at the desk, they don't really appreciate quite how much what they do is of such importance and such significance and is of such skill. We know there are plenty of clients out there who just think we pick up the phone, somebody answers the phone, they say yes, and we submit the CV, and away you go. It's so easy. Anyone can do recruitment. I still hear that every day.
And I think that's the understanding, though, isn't it? And Dave Madden's asked a question, which we're going to get to, Dave, don't worry, on how do we get over new agencies buying the work, i.e. dropping their fees. And I think that goes back to your client not, seeing you as a prospect and not valuing your service. And I think it's, if they value you and your service, doesn't matter how, if someone comes in cheaper, they value your service. So I think the next question will help that the next 4 or 5 questions will help on that answer, Dave, as well. So I'll keep coming back to it. Why are recruiters fearful then on pushing back? When clients come, and lots of clients come and they push back and they want to reduce our fees, why are recruiters fearful of pushing back?
There is something in there about lowest common denominator stuff, isn't it? You've had one pushback, you've had one client challenge, and so your assumption is that they all will, and so there becomes then a reluctance to, we had this with the annual increase on temp margin, and you'd have a load of additional costs with minimum wage changes, national insurance changes, we have the stuff with the apprenticeship levy coming in, and you kind of say, okay, right, we've got to do an across the board increase. And there's this absolute, but people are going to say no. Well, okay, a couple of people are going to say no, but most people actually will just take the increase, and it happens, and it's really easy. And so sometimes I think we're frightened. We've had one knockback, and the fear comes from that, and it's taking each call to put the fees up with a sense of optimism, because actually those clients that we've got great relationships with, and we offer them other services, and I think we'll come on to that in some of the answers to the questions, but that we've built that deep relationship so that they don't just see it as being about the invoice value and the individual placement. We need that confidence to overcome it, because a lot of the times people will just take it.
And remember also, in our industry, a lot of the people working in our industry now are relatively new. So a lot of people left our industry and didn't come back. So we've all had to struggle to hire good people. And those people are caught. They're caught between the clients telling them off for asking for more money or trying to have that conversation, or they're caught between going back to their bosses who are just saying to them, you've got to do a deal. You've got to do 130K, 140K in your first year, just do the deal. And they don't know where to go. And so the partnership works 2 ways. There's the partnership with the client, and for client, I mean an individual person who works on a client site. Nobody has a relationship with JP Morgan. They have a relationship with John Smith at JP Morgan. And the partnership with your own boss. And therefore, if you're a boss on here, with your own people. Are they confident enough that if they have that conversation with you to say, I'm going to ask for this amount of money, and if they say no, I may walk away, do they have your support? If you've given them the training and the intelligence and the education to have that really good conversation, and the client says no to that, do they know that they can walk away? And if they feel like that, then they may lose a few clients, but they'll win a lot more, and they'll have a deeper relationship with a lot more. Because most of us don't need all the clients we've got. We need the ones that will buy intelligently from us at a rate that gives us the reward that we deserve.
And that's exactly where I was going, Dave. I think it's what we've talked about a little bit before, that we have no confidence in our service, which relates us to being treated by a suspect. So therefore, we've got to break that cycle. And therefore, walking away from clients who don't respect your service will lead to opportunities to finding clients who actually do. So I think sometimes at the fear, we've got to look in the mirror, because if we're forever dropping our pants, at every request, then we're cheap and people see us as being cheap. And if we don't value our service and value ourselves, then clients exploit that. So what we've got to start thinking about is, we've got to value our service. We've got to look in the mirror and value our service and walk away from clients who don't value our service. And if every recruitment agency thought like that and did that, then guess what? Those clients would have to fall in line at some stage. But we all know there's lots of agencies that are happy to drop their pants and work at 5, 6, 7, 8%. I mean, there's a client on today that on here that we were having a discussion last week where they were working with a client at 18%. They wanted to go exclusive with the recruitment agency, but only at 8%. And we walked away. And absolutely, that's the right thing to do, to walk away, because there has no value in our service. And I think we've got to start to value ourselves more and push back. So if we start to think about that, increasing of fees appear to be alien in the recruitment marketplace. You know, what's the first thing we should be doing to actually change this?
Well, I think we're in a place, aren't we, in our economic cycle where pricing and prices and increased prices is part of everyday conversation, irrespective of whether we work in recruitment or not. Everything is going up. There's a lot of families struggling. There's a lot of companies struggling. People are trying to find a way of how they can still make some money and have to live with higher prices. And I use that as a context of it shouldn't be an alien concept to either a recruitment individual or the client that there's a conversation about prices are going up. I think any client that approaches a recruitment company to ask it to put its prices down, that is alien. What is not alien is having a conversation with an individual on a client side about prices going up. Prices going down is alien. That was something from a few years ago. We as in the recruitment companies, we have access to the talent that the companies need. We are the ones that should be able to have an intelligent conversation to command a higher price because of everything that's going up, because of the service we do. So in answer to that question, I think I would just remove the fact that it is an alien concept, because sadly, with all of what's going on in the wider world, increases of prices is not alien, it is here. And perhaps, you know, given the economic forecast, it's here to stay for the next year or so.
So before you come in there, Heather, let me give you a sort of something from my background, which was quite an interesting view. So I worked very heavily with Nissan, and Nissan used to constantly say to me, "We hate you." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "For a simple reason. We've got a whole department that looks at our service base and our supply base. And so we can go to a person who's producing ball bearings, let's say, or ball bearings for our wheels, and say, look, we want to reduce your cost by 20%. But we've worked out if you cut your size of your ball bearing by 0.0001 of a millimeter, you will save this amount of money in material. They'll still fit in our car, and therefore you'll make more money overall, even by giving us a 20% cost reduction." So they used to work it both ways, but they said they could never do that with recruitment until we talked about tenure of contractors. The longer the contracts are in there, the more knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And we talked about lots of different things. So I think increasing fees, we need to understand our services better and actually cost our services and how we provide those services. So if we logically understand the cost of our service and our delivery, then we can start to negotiate both sides of the table. So if we looked at, say, introducing some AI into our business that said cost us, say, £500 a month, you know, that might give every consultant in the business X amount of hours per week back to be selling to your clients and your candidates, etc. Therefore, we should make more money. That means we could go to our clients and talk about the cost of our delivery has increased, but the quality of the candidates that we'll produce, the quality of our service will increase, and therefore reduce the overall cost of their recruitment, meaning that they'll spend less time, have better attraction policies, better retention policies, and their speed of recruitment will increase, etc., which gives them an overall massive reduction in costs, but we can therefore increase our prices. And that's exactly what we did with Nissan. We ended up increasing our prices, and they were really thankful because they suddenly understood what was actually happening. And that was back in the 90s. So I think if we understand our processes better and understand that we can actually get a cost saving from both ends of the barrel, our back office, our front office, and well as the client, and pass that on to the client so the client can see that, then it isn't alien. But that to me is the first thought I'd be thinking about when, if people are asking me about price reduction, I'd be going the other way and looking at the things that I can do to actually increase my price, but saving the client huge costs in the end. Heather, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you're both bang on with that. And it ultimately, it comes down to how well have we trained our consultants to have that conversation? How well do they understand how talent acquisition, things like speed of recruitment that you've said there, how well do our consultants understand the context of what we do in the context of the organization? So actually, for, you know, in my role in HR, recruitment was only one part of it, but getting recruitment right then fed into all the other things that I was responsible for, like retention, like productivity. And so getting better recruitment decisions and paying more for them meant all of the other things. So you know, fell into place and improved. And I think that's absolutely key, is do we understand the context of where recruitment fits into an organizational success plan? Do we understand why what we do is so valuable, and how do we sell it in that way? How do we argue back that actually, you know, we've all seen how awful the whole managed service driving margins down to the point where you can't afford to provide compliant candidates, you know, comes in. It's having those arguments that says you pay for quality because it does this for your business, because it moves these metrics that are nothing to do with recruitment. They're the things that are further down the line, and you really have to understand how we fit into the overall context of an organization's success.
And Heather, you're so right. And I think part of that training as well is we have to train our consultants how to train their buyers for that as well.
Yes.
Because what happens in a lot of clients, and we all know this, we have a good relationship with the consultant, but somebody in finance, somebody in purchasing sees recruitment as a commodity price and they just won't pay it. And the person that we have a relationship with doesn't have the skills to go to the finance person and say, actually, it's not like that. A person isn't a pencil, a person isn't a tire. This is what the company does and this is how they do it.
Yeah.
So
and this is the value of quality, right? So this is the value of quality, of paying for it.
Yeah.
So to call order on that, Mark's just asked put a comment in the chat box, which is absolutely right. If clients will pay if they feel they are getting a good service, good advice, high standards of ethics and professional. If a client is approached by someone who has not got professional business approach, it opens the doors to prices being devalued. And I think we're absolutely right. So we must train our staff to be professional and offer professional, higher quality services. And that's absolutely right. And Dave said, asked another question. If a client, I had a client argue last week that salaries are going up, therefore your higher fee, you got higher fees anyway. I'm going to come back to that again, Dave, and work on that one. But I think, as we move forward down that, when approaching a client to discuss fee increases, let's look at that from what should be in our armory to help us negate that, such as cost restrictions on salaries and things like that, because they're the things that clients are going to come back to us with this. So what should be in our armory to help combat those type of comments?
Well, what should be in our armory is reminding the client, the individual or the group of people we deal with, exactly what we do for the money that they pay us. One of my clients about 6 months ago hired a talent acquisitions person from a client. They'd only worked client side, and they came to the recruitment side. They came to run a recruitment desk for the first time working for this company. And he is a very intelligent, erudite person with a good business brain. And he said it was only when he worked for the recruitment company that he realized what recruiters actually do. Yeah. Yeah. And this is a very good guy with 15, 18 years business experience, working in talent acquisition on the client side. Suddenly he realized how many calls he has to make to get to the right candidate, how many searches, how to write a Boolean search, all the different little things that we all do. You break it all down, there'll be 101 things you do. And it's almost like saying to the client, and we've done this with some of our clients, Jump, here's a list of all the things we do. Which bits do you not want? And we will price our service appropriately. And you can choose between A, B, C, or D, or A or B, or whatever it may be. But if you choose A, this is what you get. If you choose B, this is what you get. If you choose C, this is what you get. If you choose D. But on that list are between 50 and 100 different things. And what tends to happen in the conversation, the clients go, well, I didn't realize you did all of that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it?
Smaller new companies can't do all of that because they haven't got the heritage, they haven't got the depth, they haven't got the experience. So they're new, so they're reducing their price to buy a business. So that lends to a conversation, and a conversation is a healthy thing because you may not get what you want and the client may not get exactly what they want, but you can come to some sort of compromise. But more importantly, you've built a stronger relationship on the basis of what you do.
So I think it's interesting, Dave, that you sort of bring that up, because I do the training sessions for the REC for new people coming into the recruitment market that have no recruitment skills on how to run their business. And it's really interesting when you start to talk to them about what recruiters actually do. They sit there going, well, I've done some recruitment for my company. I was in charge of recruitment for my company. And then you suddenly start to talk about, and they do a simple thing, let's look about building a candidate database. And they're going, oh, we've got, oh, so you're expecting me to have over 200 candidates in a list every single month that I'm calling every single month to find out what, yeah. And you should have 200 clients in, and they go, where am I going to get time to do anything else? I said, welcome to recruitment. And they just don't understand what recruiters actually do. So I think some of the things that we need to have in our armory is what you're talking about there, Dave. But I think the biggest thing in our armory is to understand our features, advantages, and benefits of our USPs within the company. What's in it for us and what's in it for your client as well, and give them the genuine why you're looking to increase your fees and what's going on. And so therefore what you were talking about earlier on about using your data to help them see the efficiencies, is really important. And I think one thing that what lots of recruiters do is that word comes up, I want to have a discussion about fees, and instantly we think it's going to be a reduction. We need to stop, think, stay calm, take a big breath, and then actually set our own expectations of what we want from that discussion, and then plan for the objections that are going to come. And so we've got a really good answer of how we're going to answer that. And the client then sees why we are the prospect to work with and not something to reduce. And at the moment, that because what you've just said there, Dave, they don't see what we do. They don't understand what we do. They don't understand, it's not the fact that they can ring it up and we can potentially get a candidate straight back to them. What they don't see is the 30 years that we've done before that to be able to do that. And I think that's what they don't see. And we've got to sort of dispel this mystery of what recruitment actually is. It's a hard slog, and lots of work goes in to actually get that end product to the client, but the client doesn't see that, and we've got to see that. And they're seeing it now for the first time. I think for a long time they're seeing it now because of the speed of recruitment and the candidate shortage, and now they're understanding the value of a really good recruitment agency. But they're still in that old mindset of, we're getting great value, right? I want it at 18%, but now I want it at 8% because I can now give you more work. And I think that's where we've got to draw the line and move forward from there. So the question, I think I'm going to come to you on this question, Heather. What are the major objections you're going to have to overcome? Because you'll have thrown some of these objections at Rec2Recs and other suppliers into recruitment agencies. So what major objections do we think we have to overcome when we're speaking to clients?
It's a funny. I was a really easy sell, Howard. I was a pushover.
I'm saying nothing.
But I work with recruiters all the time. I could not be poacher turned gamekeeper. It just didn't sit nicely with me. I was never going to argue. I was just thinking whether there's anybody on here who ever had an argument with me about price. I think I do find that quite a difficult question, because it was always about if my boss saying to me, we'll get it for the cheapest possible, or it was finance department setting budget, that was the issue, because obviously I understand the value of recruitment, because I didn't want to do this myself. I needed somebody. I couldn't find the candidate. I didn't have time to do it. And so absolutely I was willing to pay somebody to do it for me. And I genuinely didn't want the cheapest offer, because the value was never going to be there. And so, you know, I might have a jokey conversation with somebody about 1 or 2% on the price, but genuinely I was going to pay what they were going to charge me, because I wanted them to prioritize me. And I understood that as a client. And I'm not the only client who understands that. If a recruitment consultant's got 2 jobs, one at 20% and one at 10%, they're going to work on the 20% one, aren't they? And I really understood that. So I wasn't going to argue.
So what do you think, Dave? What do you think, Dave? If only every client was like Heather, how easy recruitment would be, and we'd be all billionaires. This time next year, Rodney, we'll be all billionaires.
The differentiator, Howard, wasn't that I was a soft touch. The differentiator was that I understood what good recruitment was worth.
Yeah,
right? That was the differentiator.
Where were you?
And that's a huge. So let's flip that question to you, Dave. What do you think the major objections are that come up that really we need to be better armed to able to overcome these objections with genuine features, advantages, of benefits? We all know we sell features by the billion. The clients actually only buy benefits, but we never actually get the features, advantages and benefits really across to clients properly. So,
and I don't know how those objections have changed in the last 20 years. You know, the objections of somebody else will do it cheaper. I want to work with somebody who's a specialist. You know, the same objections that we were trained when we were salespeople probably are the same objections today. There is always somebody to do it cheaper. There is always somebody that says they've got access to all the candidates. It comes down to training and being able to overcome in a very intelligent, chatty way. Actually, I understand what you're saying to the client, but actually, let me tell you about this, this, and this. And 99% of the time, that conversation works to the recruitment company's favor. Or if it doesn't convince the client, then the recruitment person has a choice to make. Do they carry on trying to service that client at a price that they don't feel is valuable to their service, or do they move on? And what a lot of companies have done in the last 6 to 12 months is they've moved on. They've looked at their client and prospect list and have gone, actually, we're not going to deal with those. We're only going to deal with these. And that has led to a maturity in approach, as well as better skilled consultants at the desk.
It was interesting that halfway through Heather's conversation there, I forgot to move the slides on a little bit. But the one that's on the screen now is the one that sort of really resonated me from Seth Godin. You know, perhaps the reason price is all your customers care about is because you haven't given them anything else to care about. And I think that's part of the objection. We give them nothing else to care about. So I'll go to another supplier. They should be really worried about losing you as a supplier. No one else is asking for a price increase. Well, sort of shows you're very different to everybody else in the marketplace. You know, our costs are going up as well. Our salaries are going up as well. Well, so are all ours as well. And having that, you know, understanding of that we're going through the same things, our costs are going up, etc., is a real good understanding. And that goes back to what we've just talked about. If we then can counteract those arguments with how our service actually saves them money, then all of a sudden we can do a whole different thing. And I think some of the objections that come back, as you say, Dave, are the old objections that if we actually think about what we're supplying to our clients, we can easily overcome. But the fact that we're not trained well enough to overcome those objections, and we're fearful, and I think clients smell that fear and they come in and they go, bang, I can easily reduce this. That's what happens. But, you know, I had a client in lockdown who one of their clients wanted a 2% reduction, and she said no, and the client stopped working with her. And by the time 3 months had gone and she'd gone back into the client every single week and talked to the client every single week, he realized how much money he was losing on the bad hires he was having. And this was a temp workforce, and reinstated her. And she only said, I will, well, from my conversation with myself was, I said, go and ask for a 2% increase.
Yeah.
And she actually got the 2% increase. But it took the client 3 months to understand of bad service and how much bad service actually costs him on a temp worker to then reinstate and be then happy to pay the 2% extra on top when he was so adamant that it was going to be a 2% reduction.
And that's the problem, isn't it? That we have that fear of walking away from bad business because we are worried about our targets and we're worried we won't replace it with good business. And that's a toughie.
And I'm always amazed still at how few consultants know the stats on what the cost of a bad hire is. Clearly, this applies more to permanent than contract. But the cost of a bad hire, you can read Harvard Business Review or you quoted CV Library. There's lots of different stats on it. But just getting a hire wrong, as we know from running our own businesses, if you get a hire wrong, it costs you a lot of money. But we don't articulate that.
What I'm surprised about, Dave, more often than not, is they don't understand the cost of a good hire, i.e. the cost of retention. And if you retain that person in rather than sort of 2.5 years, you retain them for 4.5 years, how much that actually saves the business, but also how much it gives the business. I want to move on to the next question. Okay, so the next question is, why do recruitment agencies struggle with selling to clients what they I'll rephrase that. Why do recruitment agencies struggle with selling to clients what they should see as paid extras, but the client sees them as the norm?
I think that probably goes back to how we've articulated what the norm is. Yeah, so if the client thinks we're going to interview every candidate face to face, for example, as part of our 7% fee, then more fool us for leading them to believe that we can afford to do that. We need to work out what it costs us to do our service and where can we add value that the client perceives as value and is prepared to pay for it. And then you cost that up and you look at your commission schemes. At the moment, 95% of our commission schemes reward the sale, not the customer satisfaction, not the value the customer perceives, because we're sales. Ultimately, we are a sales organization. We want to sell people and make a profit. But the way that we are rewarded drives the behavior. So we have to look at that as owners and managers as well. But I think it's just how we've articulated what
and how we've trained
value is.
And how we've trained our staff to understand, do they understand?
So, and there's the question, how we train our staff. So I'm going to come back to you, Heather, on the end of this. I want you to come in on the end of this because I want to see whether this is the experience that you've had, because this is the experience my clients tell they have from recruiters. Okay. We blend selling and negotiation together. And what I mean by that is we give all our services and our price all in one go, when what we actually need to do is separate that out. If we compartmentalized our service, so here's our contingency, here's exclusive, here's retained, here's talent advisory, and every service got bigger and the client understood what actually comes with that service, and they then agree which service fits their business model at that time, then you can start to give a fee. But what we tend to do is give it all at once, so the client can just go, no, I don't want that, I just want this, but I'm expecting it all now, because he doesn't understand the different parts down. So if we break down the success rate of each service, and this is what I would be thinking from a back of the office, if we break down the success rate for each service, then we can go even further. On our contingency service, Mr. Client, we have a 50% success rate, but on our retained service, we have a 92% success rate. So you can start to then push your client into a sort of different marketplace based on the success you have. They're going to ask you, well, why? Well, we're retained, we're exclusive, we can headhunt into the market. 92% of the market is not looking for a job. We can go into that market rather than you just getting the 8% of the marketplace. They can then start to see the quality of what we're actually giving to our service. So as the service level increases, so should the quality of the candidate. Therefore, so should the quality of the retention of that candidate, which reduces the overall cost of recruitment. So if your client's struggling to listen to that or see that, then we're not selling it properly to the client. Therefore, if we can sell a higher quality service, which gives them a higher quality candidate, they start to see you as a prospect rather than as a suspect, where at the moment we're constantly on the back foot, because when we've put our sell in, we put it in all in one big bundle, give them a price, and they just go, no, it's 15%. And we just go, oh, okay. Rather than saying, well, okay, I'll go from exclusive, which is 92% success rate, down to contingency, which is 50% success rate. And you can tell them why that is, and they understand that. Then all of a sudden they have a very different understanding of that. And when I was selling to clients, I would say that all the time. Do you understand when you give this as a contingency, you give it to 4 other agencies, what happens? And when I told them what happens, they were going, oh, we thought because we were putting competition in place, it would make we get a better level of candidates. No, you get more candidates, but more rubbish candidates, because we're just getting the fastest candidate to you, not the best candidate to you. All of a sudden, clients had a better understanding because they didn't think of it in that fashion. So we've got to do it there. So I'm asking you the question, Heather, when Rec2X was selling you, is that what they did? Give you the whole service and the price, which enabled you to negotiate on everything rather than each individual compartmentalized part?
Yeah. So I very, very rarely bought recruitment services on a contingency basis. I almost always bought it on a retained basis. And because why would I go to multiple agencies when they were all going to be attacking the same market? And I was generally looking for a really narrow skill set for it. So I bought on a retained basis, and I negotiated on a retained basis. So,
you should be training all our clients, Heather. That's what we should be looking at. We should be getting Heather to train our clients on how to buy services. That's
Howard, that's what it's about. We have to educate our clients as much as we have to. Our consultants need to be educated, but we must educate our clients about what they're buying, and the service that they're getting. And it's such an important part of a salesperson's deal negotiation, is for them to educate the client in exactly the way you've just described about what is the difference between retained and contingent in terms
so
of.
As we're running out of time, Dave, I've got a question to ask here, which I think is going to be important. Okay, the cost of delivery of our service has gone up for years and years and years, but actually our average fee has actually decreased years on years on years. So the question is, how do we reverse this? Which then links back to Dave Madden's question about salaries are going up, therefore your fees naturally going up. The pound notice, but the percentage isn't. How do we respond to that? So if the cost of our delivery of service has gone up for years on years, but average fees have decreased, how do we reverse that?
Well, I think there is only one way, and that's make sure that our price reflects what we do, and therefore our prices should go up. I've seen with the clients that we're dealing with that their prices have gone up. I don't buy that for years and years prices have gone down. I think they did go down, but we're very much now into a market which affords for us to have higher prices anyway. So I'm seeing that fees are going up. I know one major bank wrote to all of its suppliers and increased its perm fee from 20 to 25%. Yeah, I don't know that any agency asked them to do that. They just realized they weren't getting the staff and they put the fees up. Yeah, so I think fees are going up in line with everything else, but I think fees are going up. And also, I think people are beginning to realize that as they are struggling to get candidates, to all of the points that you made at the beginning of the webinar, the role of what we do as recruiters is more valuable, and you will pay for value. Why offer an oldie price with a Waitrose service? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
so
and I think
I think it's something that we can do and just help drive those fees for higher.
Yeah, I was just going to really reinforce what you just said, Dave. I think in the market we've been in and are in, more and more recruitment businesses are willing to say no to contingent business and go for retained and put their prices up, and more clients are willing to say yes, because it's such a challenging market.
Yeah,
there's a realization of the value of good recruitment, and so we can use that to our advantage.
I think it's an interesting, if you're honest and realistic with your client about our fees are going up, our costs of business are going up, and it's a regular conversation that we're having with clients, and then we're looking at how we can sort of come around that, very much like Nissan do, etc. Then we have a vetted approach to that. But the fact that we fear that, we always back away from it, shy away from it, and therefore it's left in the domain of the client, and therefore the client takes control of that situation. And very few clients, Dave, as you've mentioned, that the bank actually will put the prices up, but they're seeing it because they've got to put them up because they want to get the better people. But we often feel that we're held over a barrel by our clients, and that's not because of the way the client is. It's because of our poor relationship that we have with our client, and the fact that we don't hold our processes and our business in the highest esteem that it should be held in. Because if it was, we wouldn't be dropping prices. Dave's put in there, you know, it all sounds great, Dave, great, but Heather, you're not like 99% of our current client base. I know we need to change, add clients that are more understanding of the process. I totally agree that education to clients is the most important aspect of this. However, when we go and look at our training modules, it's interesting, I was with a client this week and we started to go through his training modules, and there was nothing on pricing to the client. It was just, here's our services, here's our fee. There was nothing about educating the client on, you know, what we actually do, why we do it, why our fees look so, why our fees should go up. And that is, I think that's the main thing from today that sort of comes out, is that we've got to understand our business better. We've got to compartmentalize it so we can start to see where we can actually add true, genuine value to our client. And then we've got to train our staff to absolutely be able to nail that, full stop. Because if we don't, we're always on the back foot.
One of my favorite training sessions I used to run with my consultants in the group I was working in was, how do you talk to a HR manager? What does a HR manager do? What does a HR director do? What's their job? What's important to them, and how do you approach them? How do you have a conversation with them? And it was great. It was great fun for me because I would hear what recruiters thought of HR, but I would also be able to give an HR perspective. And help them to understand it. It was very fun.
There's a question there, though, isn't there, that sort of said we're training recruiters to go and do this, and we should be training recruiters to go and do this. However, Dave, I'm assuming Dave is the owner of a business, and he's the owner of a large business to a certain degree, and yet what we should be thinking that peer-on-peer selling. So if I'm a director going in to sell to a director, it's very different from the recruitment line speaking to the recruiter. So if I'm going to speak to the owners of the business, the CEOs of the business, I'm talking about actually what we do for the business and how we can reduce their overall costs, the business owners start to see the value within the business, and then that starts to trickle down. But we tend only to sell to that person once, and then it's back to the recruitment line, and we talk to the recruitment line, but we only sort of sell it as a recruiter rather than thinking about a business value proposition rather than a recruitment proposition. And I think there's two ways of selling that. Us as directors should be going and selling the business value proposition to the C-suite, and the recruiters, the recruitment value proposition to the people down below. That way we get a very, very more powerful sell and a better understanding of what we're selling to clients. Heather, interesting to hear it from a HR side. We wish every client was like you. So we want to bottle Heather and send it out to our client marketplace. Dave, thanks very much for your input. As always, most welcome. Ladies and gents, that's it for this session. We'll be back next week with a complete new set of a new series of recruitment discussions. So please join us next week. Thank you for all your time. I wish you all the best on this Wednesday, and we'll see you all next week. Dave, Heather, thanks very much. See you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.